Great. Hi. Hi, Edward. Hi, Ahmed. Hi, welcome. We're just going to wait a few minutes before we start, as people kind of slowly trickle in, but welcome on this Wednesday lunchtime. Good to have you guys here. I'm Emily. I'll be facilitating, so I won't be saying too much, but I'll do a bit of housekeeping and we'll keep the chat quite active throughout before I hand over to Eddie and Paul as well for the content. We'll just give people a minute or so to come in. How's the weather in London today, guys? Any
Yeah, it's
sunshine?
looking beautiful to be honest. It's really nice out there. Beautiful sunshine.
Oh, thank goodness.
Rays raining
Finally.
down, which is nice.
Perfect weather for
That's
a webinar on compliance essentials.
Yeah.
That's it, keeping people inside.
Mm.
Edward, Ahmed, if you feel like introducing yourself in the chat, saying where you're from, you are more than welcome to. I'll be moderating it throughout the presentation today as well. So any questions as you go along, please feel free to drop them in. Shall we pull the slides up, guys, for people that are gonna
Oh
join?
yeah. Do you want to
Yeah,
just
I
get
can.
the first
I
slide
can.
up?
Yeah, I could do that.
Great, thank you. Yeah, maybe we'll leave it another minute or two if you guys are happy to wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So just as a bit of housekeeping, it will be cameras, mics off, but as I say, we'll keep the chat active. So if there's any questions, if there's burning questions, we'll happily answer them throughout. Otherwise, we'll have specific slots at the end of Paul's section, so Assuric section on safety and cyber, and then again at the very end. And also, if you guys stick around to the very end as well, we've got an exciting gift for those who have attended as well. Okay, nice. I think we're a couple of minutes in. Do you guys want to just start maybe introducing generally kind of who you are, then we can ease into the presentation?
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Emily. I don't mind going first. So yeah, in the way of introductions, I'm Paul. I'm co-founder, CEO of Assuric. I'm a doctor by background, so I've worked in the NHS myself for 8 or 9 years, practicing currently as a medical registrar in respiratory medicine, internal medicine. Alongside that, I've worked in digital health tech, particularly on the compliance and the safety side, and founded Assuric a couple of years ago. And what Assuric does is we are primarily a software platform for companies and healthcare organizations covering different aspects of compliance and governance, a lot of what we'll cover today. And as well as that, we do a lot of kind of services and in that space around clinical safety, information governance, medical devices, etc.
Brilliant, thanks, Paul. And I'm Eddie, one of the co-founders of C3. We help companies with carbon reporting, so any kind of carbon footprint measurements, net zero strategies, net zero targets, science-based targets initiative submissions, evergreen assessment support calls, basically anything that comes under carbon reporting we can kind of assist with, or carbon measurements. Um, and we started working with NHS suppliers probably 2 or 3 years ago now, when the PPN 0621 requirements came in. We were previously working with a lot of um, government contract or government companies working with the government who had to do PPN 0621, and the NHS then took that over as well. So we started working with NHS suppliers, and now most of our customers, sorry, are NHS suppliers in medical devices, health tech, and pharmaceutical industry. So work with a lot of on the carbon aspects of compliance, not the safer and cyber aspects. That's very much Paul's expertise. We're more the sustainability aspect, the carbon side of things. I'm really looking forward to this webinar.
Great, thanks, guys. I think as it's 5 past, a few more people trickled in. So, hello, welcome everyone. Really glad to have you guys here. The chat should be working. Weirdly enough, it's not working for me, but I saw that. Also, hi, Bilal. Bilal was able to introduce himself in there, so hopefully that's fine. We will take questions, burning questions throughout. That's absolutely fine. And we'll have a slot just after Paul's section, then again at the very end. As I said earlier, also, if you wait until the end, we'll also be giving away something exciting. Um, Eddie, do you mind quickly? Are you the main organizer? Can you see if the chat function's working properly just to make sure people can send questions? Unless
Yeah,
it's just a me problem. It might
yeah,
be.
I can see the chat working. We've got a comment in there. So yeah, if anyone else wants to introduce themselves, feel
Okay.
free.
Okay.
In the chat side of things, there is also Q&A, but I never really understand the difference between the two. I think just use the chat for questions, and we'll keep an eye on that.
Yes, I see someone's typing. Okay, that's great. Perfect.
Great.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's everything. So yeah, happy for you guys to crack on.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. Let's make a start. So I'll be taking the first half, and I'll be covering compliance aspects for digital NHS suppliers, particularly on the safety and the cyber side of things. I did a brief intro earlier for anyone who's just joined. I'm a clinician by background, worked in the NHS for 8+ years. As well as that, I've worked in digital and health tech, particularly on the compliance side, being a clinical safety officer for a number of suppliers to the NHS. And what Assuric does is we're a compliance platform in the space of digital health compliance. So we work with a large number of digital health companies as well as healthcare organizations, and we cover a lot of what I'll be talking about. Feel free to reach out to me if you think I can help in any way via email, LinkedIn, etc. And what I'll cover is specifically these aspects. So a lot of acronyms, but we'll cover what they are in the presentation. NHS DTAC, that's the Digital Technology Assessment Criteria. DCBO 129, which is digital clinical safety for digital health systems, the NHS DSPT, or the Data Security and Protection Toolkit, DPIAs, which are data protection impact assessments, and Cyber Essentials. And I'll go through each of these and explain what they are. Specifically, I'll just briefly explain why they're important, and importantly, who does it apply to? So it's important to realize whether this is applicable to you or not. And yeah, just a high level overview of what's involved. You don't need to remember everything. It's just useful to have an idea of what you might need to do. Broadly speaking, why do we talk about this stuff? But compliance ultimately exists and is there as a legal requirement, really to reduce risk of things like data breaches, patient harm, etc. And as a result, it often is a contractual and a procurement requirement if you're going for any contracts with the NHS. And ultimately, it exists there to protect the users, patients, and build trust. So getting into some of the specifics, some of you may have heard of NHS DTAC, which is the Digital Technology Assessment Criteria. V2 is up there because they actually recently update this and released a newer version in March. Importantly, you have to think about whether it applies to you. So it technically applies to any software product, so any digital system that's designed to improve health outcomes or support the delivery of health and care services, which is the majority of digital solutions in the NHS, but it doesn't apply to all. So if you're a generic system, maybe using finance or HR and things like that, this wouldn't necessarily apply to you. So it's important to realize whether it's applicable or not. And broadly what's involved, busy slide, different sections covering clinical safety, data protection, technical security, interoperability, and usability and accessibility. I'll go through the first three of these in a little bit more detail. So as I go, some bits are highlighted in pink. These are just highlighting some of the additions or differences from the first version. So if you're a software as a medical device, which is what SAMD stands for, you would also need to complete a PAQ form. I'll go through the other clinical safety requirements shortly. And then the other one is a cybersecurity charter, which is something as an organization you can sign and sort of attest that you're meeting various cybersecurity requirements. Now, a good place to get started if you're new to this is going to the actual DTAC page on the NHS England website and downloading the form, which has some guidance and explains what these things are and what you actually need to do. taking each of these in turn, so just focusing on clinical safety first, I'll talk through the standard that underpins this, which is DCV 0129. So this is a digital clinical safety standard for health IT systems, and it exists because ultimately any software used in the NHS in a kind of clinical capacity has the potential to introduce clinical risk and lead to patient harm. And this applies to any health IT system, whether it's a medical device or not. There's lots of headlines of things going wrong in the past, unfortunately, that have resulted in actual patient harm. And this is one of the reasons why standards like this are actually written up into the Health and Social Care Act and are a legal requirement in England. So one to be aware of if it's applicable to you. And it's useful to work out whether it's applicable for you. And there's a nice flowchart which is available on the NHS England website. And essentially it applies to any digital product which is supporting health and social care services in England. And again, that's more of a kind of clinical role as opposed to perhaps a HR or a finance system. So it's really the same applicability as the NHS DTAC more broadly. Worth highlighting that if you do fit that category, it's a legal requirement in England. So yes, if you're unsure, I'd signpost you to this flowchart to work out whether it's applicable or not. You may have noticed on the flowchart they also reference DCV 0160. I'll just highlight this again, don't worry too much about the numbers, but the key take home here is that it's a Jewell standard with responsibilities on the supplier, the manufacturer of the health IT system or the digital health software, and then there's also a requirement and responsibility on the NHS itself, on the deploying organisation. From the point of view of a digital health NHS supplier, you need to comply with DCB 0129, and the NHS organisation will want to see evidence of that compliance. And that evidence is a few things. It's mainly some key deliverable documentation, which demonstrates that you as an organisation have performed a clinical risk analysis of the system, which means identifying hazards and implementing controls. You have a CSO or a clinical safety officer to oversee this process. And then this ultimately means production of 2 or 3 key documents, the 2 most important being a hazard log and a clinical safety case report, which you then have to share with the NHS organisation who will want to see and review that as part of both their procurement process and then also as part of the deployment. The CSO, by definition in the standard, should be a licensed clinician who is trained or experienced in clinical safety. And this can either be someone internal to the organisation or external, and both are absolutely fine. So a good starting point is to realise if this is applicable and appoint a CSO. Moving on from the clinical safety aspects to the second part of DTAC, which is around data protection. Specifically, one of the requirements is to meet the requirements of the NHS DSPT, which stands for Data Security and Protection Toolkit. And who does this apply to? Well, it applies to all organisations who are accessing NHS data, patient data, and systems. So this can be quite broad, and probably more broad than, say, the safety standard itself. And what it involves is if you're a small health IT supplier, which is generally less than 50 employees, then you would need to do an annual online self-assessment, which you can access via the DSPT portal. And just to give you an idea of what it contains, is it wants to see compliance with GDPR around the handling of personal data. They want to see some controls around access controls, staff awareness and training. And there are elements to show that an organization has appropriate incident responses and business continuity plans. And they want to see some technical security in the form of cyber essentials or a penetration test. And I'll come on to what both of those are if you've not heard of them shortly. To get started with this, you need to register for an ODS code, which is an organization code you can do online, and then access the DSPT self-assessment itself. Just highlight, make sure you select the correct organization type because it determines which questions you have to answer. If you click health IT supplier, that means you're a large health IT supplier and you'll have a lot more to do, and you'll also have to do an external audit. In this case, it's like you might be a small health IT supplier, which has less questions and you don't have to do an external audit. It's a self-assessment. So moving on to DPIAs, which are an important part of DTAC and of compliance with data protection law and GDPR more broadly. And these are applicable to you if you're essentially, briefly put, if you're processing patient data, the NHS's patient data, then you will need to do an DPIA, because these apply to anyone where their data processing is a high risk to the rights and freedoms of individuals. And this generally means if it's special category data, which is patient data, health data, if you do larger scale processing, or if you're using innovative technologies, then you'll need to do this data protection impact assessment or DPIA.